Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of the Onvisor podcast. My guest this week is Rachelle Comeau, who is Director of Product Development and Market Strategies with Assumption Life. Assumption Life being a mutual insurance company from right here in Moncton, New Brunswick. They are a leader not only in the insurance space, but also a leader in our community here in Atlantic Canada, and that is growing beyond Atlantic Canada's borders. Rachelle is a seasoned leader within the Assumption team from her beginnings right after university all the way to her most recent roles where she's helping steer the ship, which is Assumption Life and their new ventures and their huge success going forward. So I hope you guys will enjoy this conversation about all things insurance and what makes Assumption Life a very remarkable company from right here in Moncton. Enjoy. Okay, so today in the booth we have Rachelle Comeau from Assumption Life. How are you, Rachelle?
I'm good. You?
Good. Rachelle and I are both bilingual, Assumption being a French company, but we opted to do this podcast in English just because it's easier for everybody. But Rachelle, fierté francophone?
Oui, absolument.
Oui, absolument. Oui. Okay. Rachelle, I guess jump into a little bit of your role at Assumption, how you got there, and what are you passionate about in your work?
Absolutely. So I ended up joining Assumption Life after finishing my master's, and I just said, okay, I want to get a job on Main Street. That was honestly my full transparency. So I was working for a company that was just outside of Moncton, and I said, okay, I'm tired of traveling. Let's go downtown. And there was this old philosophy about 10, 15 years ago that downtown is where all the the momentum was, and this is before COVID, right?
Bump into people,
100%. Yeah, and that's where you network, and you can network when you're in line waiting for a coffee. So coming out of university, I said, okay, let's try this out. And a position came out, and the person that was in HR at the time knew me pretty well, and she said, look, it's a new department. Assumption Life is starting to innovate and really do things differently. So you might like this. And I was like, what is it? So she's like, it's a marketing research analyst. I'm like, that doesn't sound fun whatsoever. So she's like, no, trust me, come to the interview. So I go to the interview and start talking, and the person at the time who was doing the interview with me is one of my colleagues today, who's actually full blown in the innovation side, right? So he was seeing where we were going at that time, and he was asking questions in a different way of any other interview. And that's where I saw Assumption Life had a different charm to it, where it's we might be small, but we actually have great ideas. So join that team, start doing the research component, and realizing that I'm touching a million aspects of that business, and couldn't see doing a different career path because it opened up so many opportunities to different, you work with compliance, you work with marketing, you work with finance, you work with products. So you end up discovering everything that comes behind that. Wow. And then evolving through it, right? And having that impact in everything you do every day. So 11 years later, I celebrated 11 years last week. I can't see myself doing anything else, and evolve throughout that, right? So in different positions, as you know. So that's what's kind of exciting about the insurance industry, is you have no idea what it is until you put your feet in it, right? You look from the outside looking in, and you're like, this looks not appealing. And then kind of like we were speaking about earlier, no one goes into insurance to have a career in insurance or thinking this is what I want to do when I grow up.
True.
But they 100% don't leave once they I'd say 90% once you get your feet in, you don't want to leave because there's so many opportunities for growth in that industry.
So you were hooked from the start.
So I was very lucky at the time. So I don't know if you know Pierre Moncton, but he was my first mentor, coach, manager at the time. And Pierre is such a revolutionary individual that blue sky thinking. And when I started working under Pierre was very good at pushing me at take ownership. So he's like, okay, you know what, let's split tasks. Let's you take on a different line of business. You explore group insurance, explore individual insurance, investments, etc. And the more you get exposed to it, the more you realize how much there is behind it. And you don't want to stop, because then you're like, okay, there's more. You never go a day without learning something new, right?
Yeah.
So that's what's very appealing, that kind of hooks you and you don't want to leave.
Yeah, totally. I can relate because, when I first got into insurance, I went to a job fair, and I was at last year university, and it got stormed out. So basically the job fair got canceled, and I had all these lists of financial companies in finance to go visit, and Sun Life was one of them. And unlike most people, I called all of these companies and everybody who was supposed to be there and say, hey, we were supposed to meet today because I was going to drop by. Like, can we connect? Like, do you guys have? And yeah, sure enough, I didn't know at the time, but of course, any insurance company is going to take on an experience or a new sales rep. Like, they're going to give you a shot, right, for a career path. So yeah, got in with Sun Life and took my LLQP, and the ball was rolling, and I didn't see myself selling insurance or getting into the insurance world. I knew I'd be helping people with their money, but I always thought it'd be more on the investment side. But insurance is a big piece of what we do, and as you've explained, it has many components. Assumption Life has many different arms, for sure, right?
Absolutely. And I think what's undervalued is the insurance component in the university aspect or college, right? So something that is not as put in the forefront to educate people on why it's important and how they can help others. We learn finance, we learn accounting, we learn all like the aspects that will fit in an insurance company marketing, right?
True.
But we don't ever learn it in the insurance aspect of things, which I think is really undervalued when you think of how many jobs in Canada actually touch insurance.
Oh, shoot. Massive. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good point. So, one of the very unique aspects of Assumption Life is that it's a mutual life insurance company. And I say unusual because you would know this more than I do. There's not very many insurance companies that remained as a mutual. Could you explain to our viewers what a mutual insurance company is and why it's kind of special? Yeah,
for sure. So, and like you mentioned, a lot of companies are demutualizing, or they're becoming shareholders, public, right? Yeah. For the mutual aspect, and I think that's our core value, is that we're able to reinvest our profits into growing our company to offer better services and better products to our clients, and always being able to keep that financial stability there to guarantee that we'll be there when you need us most down the road. But it also allows us to give back to the community. It allows us to have like a percentage of our profits that we're able to give back into helping different community initiatives. And, our stakeholders are actually, most of them are policyholders, right? With our participating products. So
and that's what makes it unique. Exactly, is the fact that the policyholders really own indirectly the company, right? Or directly. I don't know.
And I think you're nailing it, because the great part about it is that they actually have rights to vote, like at our AGM.
Oh, yes,
I'm they can be part of our decision making. They can they have a voice, right? So that's something you don't have when you're dealing with a public company. And Assumption Life being part of the top 10 mutuals in Canada is really important, because as much as some people may think it's a dying breed, it's actually a very core breed that we need to keep putting that emphasis on why it's important and why it's so, we're transparent with our stakeholders. Everyone who has a product with Assumption Life has access to information, that they understand that we're doing things with good intent. Yeah. And that's really important when you're talking about financial products.
I think it's super important too that, when people are considering insurance products, or providers, that, I think it's important to know that the company you're doing business with has a duty to you, the policyholder, as opposed to shareholders, right? Shareholders are focused on profits and the next quarter and growth, etc., as opposed to a mutual can take a step back from that and look at the better picture and what is best for the company, because the company needs to be around to cover the policyholders. So it's kind of a lot more cohesive. And I think it's a great value proposition for mutuals and kudos to Assumption for staying mutual and for how many years now?
Yeah, so it's been over 120 years. We celebrated a couple of years back our 120-year anniversary, and Assumption Life was created like in the early 1900s to basically, it was Acadians who got together and said, okay, let's help each other. And when something bad happened back then, and we're speaking like really early 1900s, everyone would just kind of like pull up their sleeves and say, okay, let's all work together to help this family or figure it out. And if there was a loss in the family, well, and I'm going a little bit far, but like, everyone would kind of work out and help the farm or help, the business continue, etc. And we do understand that life was maybe a little bit slower back then as well. So when we were established, the objective, and it was in Massachusetts, actually, the creation of Assumption Life, a bunch of Acadians got together and said, okay, let's find a way to create like a pool where everyone is contributing to helping others when they'll need it down the road.
Right.
And fast forward, we ended up moving the head office to Moncton, New Brunswick. And if you ever saw the biggest building right now, I can't say it's the biggest building anymore because now we have apartment buildings that are building around us. But in terms of, business wise, and you see the big Assumption Life logo up top, for us, it's really important to have that presence and to stay in Atlantic Canada, right? And we're creating jobs. So if you look, when I started with Assumption Life, we had about, I think it was 140, 160 employees. We're up to like 300 if we include our subsidiaries. Wow. So when you look at that perspective and you say, okay, it's an Acadian company that was created in the early 1900s, that was created with the mutual intent, who has stayed there for the stability, the financial stability of their policyholders. And we're still there, and now we're growing outside of Canada, and we're getting, most of our policies are being sold outside of Atlantic Canada, which, like, I think last year with our record growth, we had over 80% coming from outside of Atlantic Canada, but our jobs are staying in Atlantic Canada. That's really a really important thing to consider when you're thinking of the economy in Atlantic Canada and how it's growing. We're able to go get that business, and it's all Canadian business, right? Which is great with everything else going on right now. But to have that and to create those opportunities to have that skill set in Atlantic Canada is something that's really important.
Absolutely. I think it's fantastic. It's a great, and I can say I've worked with one of your subsidiaries, Lewisburg, still work with them to this day as investment partners. And my time spent at Lewisburg and helping on some projects with Assumption Life, such as Vesta, et cetera. I've met a lot of great people and had a lot of really fun times working alongside. So you guys are a great let's say corporate citizen here in the area. So that's fantastic. So what would you say Assumption Life's strengths are in the insurance market? What kind of stands out? What makes you guys unique? And why would somebody like myself, consider purchasing or signing up for some of your products?
That's a great question. So I think if I look at the overall Assumption strategy is that we aim for quality over quantity, but we're growing that quantity with the quality, right? So I think what we try to put forward is the innovation side and the fact that we're quite agile for the industry, right? Like it's an industry that some will refer to as a dinosaur industry, right? Like everything is slow and it takes time to change. And if we look at policy changes, in terms of like anything that's governmental, it can take like 3 to 4 years before it's implemented, right? So where we can stand out is that being that size and being still agile and having that innovation component, we're able to turn things around fairly quick. And we're also able to listen to our advisors, to our clients and our policyholders, et cetera, and say, how can we better ourselves to fit in the right niche, right? So, that mass market will always have a need because there's so many underinsured individuals. From an investment point, getting really good quality funds that, we know will be there and give you the results that we're anticipating, whether it be in group insurance where we know we can make sure that you have coverage that's up to par and competitive, right? So, and allows also like business owners to have that financial stability and cost management on the group insurance side is important. So you can have all kinds of nice widgets, but at the end of the day, you want someone that's behind you that's doing really good cost management, right? So that you can sustain having insurance coverage for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And Another thing that's worth mentioning, I think, to Assumption's strength is your, I don't know how you call it, but your coverage ratio, or your
solvency ratio. Now my French is coming up, but yeah.
Which is basically the ratio of funds on hand relative to the policies outstanding.
Exactly.
And yours is,
I think we're like at 168%.
Yeah, it was north of 150%.
Yeah, and that's really important, because something that people don't understand is that you need to make sure that you're able to cover these policies if anything was to happen, right? Yeah. So you'll often hear, especially I find individuals who might not have coverage, don't understand maybe insurance as much, will be hesitant to say, well, what happens if the company closes their doors in 20 years? Or what happens if something happens financially, right? Yeah. Your solvency ratio is key to making sure that you're able to pay out those policies that were purchased today if anything happens in the future, right? So you're projecting in the future that you're going to be able to pay out those individuals when they need it most.
Yeah, and as a mutual company, policyholders actually have access to that information, whereas otherwise it might be a little bit more difficult to get access to that information. Not to say it's not available, but it's probably not as obvious or openly shared.
And it's something we put on the forefront. And that we want it to be very aware, like, AM Best gives us a score of A- for like the past 20 years, which is actually really good in terms of financial stability. So we have to report, we have to say what we do in terms of innovation, in terms of protecting our policyholders, et cetera. And we've always made sure to keep growing what we're doing and get better at it, so that we're actually supporting the industry as well.
Yeah. So on that note of supporting and going down towards your strength, do you guys have an internal or external, an open strategic positioning when you develop a product? So I've seen you guys go and own specific corners of the insurance market. Is there any strategy behind those pockets that you've kind of isolated and pretty much dominated and owned in certain respects?
Yeah. I love this question because this is right up my alley in the product development side, right? So I firmly believe that we've established over I'd say the last decade, a strategy when it comes to product development that really focuses on the niche areas that we want to make sure that we're strong in, but also in the revisions of making sure that what we're providing is up to par, right? So we will look at final expense and mortgage coverage, right? So oftentimes people get their life insurance through their bank. They don't realize they actually have a decreasing policy that isn't really benefiting them,
right? Underwriting,
right,
all
right.
That fun
and
stuff.
I think CBC had came out with like a undercover investigation they had done, I think 15 years ago, and we actually just rewatched it recently just for the fun of it. But it's like they'll have like this very, very long clause, and if anything that you have falls in that category, you're just not covered, right? Yeah. Whereas in the life insurance field, what we do is we try to have simple questions that are also going to help us predict, is there anything that we need to look into and further investigate before issuing the policy to make sure that you're confident that you'll get your payout when it comes time of claim, right? And that's really important. And that revision and that behavioral science behind those questions. Yeah. Just to give you an example, we revamped all our question sets last July, right? So all of our products were revised. It was a huge overhaul, but our product development team said, okay, let's make it like a really easy flow. Right. Yeah. So depending on your health category, we'll be able to match you with the right product. And if you know you can't qualify for this one, you kind of have a good feeling that you'll be able to qualify for the next level, right? And the question shouldn't be completely different, which is what you might find elsewhere. And then you have to learn those products, and it makes it a little bit harder for the advisor to try to figure out why is it so different from one type of product to another. Yeah. And it allows us to be innovative on that side to say, okay, like let's look at the advisor. And we know it's an industry where there's a lot of advisors, but a lot don't actually go further into developing, their block of business. They'll be able to sell a couple policies a year. Yeah. We want it to be so easy that you know exactly where to place your client when you're thinking of Assumption, right? You're like, okay, I know exactly which product is going to fit you. Yeah, exactly. So that's the intent of our product development strategy, is to make sure that it's really flowing easy and that there's no, gray zones. Yeah.
I must say I've used the simplified issue product, and you are bang on when it comes to process flow, and anybody who knows me or work with me knows that, to me, that's top priority as well. I don't want this to be friction process. I want everything to flow. I want the communication to be open and transparent. And when I, did clearly did the revamped or new version, it's nice because you're kind of being funneled or guided. It's kind of like a guided experience from the advisor's perspective. And it helps us help the client understand where they're going to do. And what I really enjoyed as well, and it was a big aha moment when Mehdi actually confirmed this with me, was that you guys kind of blended a term with a simplified issue, which I didn't realize your kind of simplified issue type questions actually qualified my clients for a legit term. Because most companies kind of segregate those two products as two individual, and to your point, have totally different applications and two different experiences. So I think similar with Vesta, that kind of just funnels you through to where you should be. I find this series of products, or at least this latest version of your update, is bang on. And I think that's what people want nowadays, is something that's quick and easy and frictionless. And if the company behind it and the product stands well, I mean, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer for particular needs.
Yeah. And I appreciate that feedback, because I think something we're very proud of at Assumption Life is that if you look at our LIA platform, right, which is the one you're referring to for life insurance, it has like an approval rating of like 4.7 on 5, and it was just relaunched, I think, in it was June or July of last year. So we had a lot of changes last year. And something that's really important is that we were one of the first ones to come out with like an application, like back in the day. And the reason we were trying to get away from that was like paper apps, right? We were like, it's easier. The information comes in, it's clear what was answered, what wasn't. It helps from a compliance approach. It helps from a understanding from the advisor. We can question, we understand what we have all the right documentation, etc. And that's where we stood out a couple of years back. And then what we did is we decided to evolve with that. And oddly enough, we went from app to web-based, right? Because apps, you have to do an update, and every time you do a change, you have to do an update. So the web-based is great because that flow that you're mentioning is right there. And to your point on the simplified and the term is that most of the time you'll go down the simplified route because it's easier, right? So it's easy. You don't have to do as much medical testing. There's not like all these extra questions. But you're going to pay a little bit more than if you went through your term underwritten product, right? However, your person might actually qualify for that term product because they might have nothing wrong, or everything's great, right? So if they're healthy, sometimes it's that question or that discussion you want to have with your client is saying, do you mind maybe doing a couple tests or answering a few extra questions, and you might actually save on terms of your premium. But the majority of Canadians would actually rather pay a little bit more than have a nurse come and,
pay the $5 a month or whatever.
And they don't see it. They see it like as an extra coffee per month, right? And I know, like, from a financial standpoint, it contradicts everything that the economy right now is saying, because people are like, okay, we're spending too much money. We have to reduce costs. But when it comes to financial decisions, I find that $5 is not where it shifts, right? And I think the price as well of insurance is something that's overestimated by Canadians.
Oh, it's so hugely overestimated. When I give people price options for term, like up to $500,000, $1 million, they're quite surprised at how inexpensive it is. But one thing I do want to say, my biggest pet peeve with the insurance industry is not being web-based applications. So huge shout out for being web-based, because I'm a Mac user, and I've had to buy a second computer to download all these applications and get all these updates all the time. So when I realized that you guys were web-based, that was a game changer for me. And also what I really enjoyed is bringing the client as part of the process. So the pre-selection process. So now with the simplified term, for example, I can send a link to the client with the question saying, are you going to be able to say no to all these questions? And if they're like, yeah, I can, cool, then this is what you're going to pay. Like, this is pretty much, you're good. So expectations.
And something that's interesting that you just said is that I find as well, if anyone ever is hesitant, it's better to declare something. And with Assumption, what's great is that our underwriters will actually look at your file. They'll see why you said yes to something, and then they'll dig and they'll question the advisor and they'll better understand why. And most of the time you'll be surprised that although you think, okay, they're not going to qualify, they would qualify because turns out it's just like, okay, you've been stable on this medication for like 10 years. So there's actually no concern. And I think that's where our smart underwriting, and I call it smart underwriting, but it's our underwriters who are really smart. They actually care enough to look and say, well, I'm not just going to send you a decline. I want to see why. You only had one question. Like, why can't we look into it a little bit further?
And to your point, a lot of people forget that there's gray areas. They think it's a yes or no. I'm healthy enough or I'm not healthy enough. And really, there's a lot of gray. It's okay, we can put something in place, but because of this, that, and that, we're going to have to charge you a little bit more, a little bit higher premium because it's a little bit higher risk. But a lot of people are like, you know, they fear the rejection. I mean, we're all human. That's totally normal. We fear the rejection. So we hesitate, right? So we think it's expensive. We think we're not going to get approved, but really, you know, and I appreciate that I appreciate when underwriters work with me, instead of going straight to a doctor's report, for example, or doing the tougher stuff. That complicates things. So that goes a long way.
No, that's fair.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about innovation. We talked a little bit about Leah, Vesta, and what I really found impressive when I worked with you guys on Vesta, which is your investment platform. And the really neat part about this investment platform is how it will guide you to kind of the more traditional, like if you don't know where, or if even an advisor doesn't know where a client should land or be invested, it will point you towards a product that's very simple, easy to understand, pretty much foolproof. And I remember, you know, making that decision and that being like a light bulb moment, being like, oh, let's just point them towards target date funds. And what I really enjoyed is how you guys don't overcomplicate things. You know, you don't make things more complicated than they have to be. And that's why I think you guys shine. You guys get to implement things relatively quickly. And you're kind of tech stacking. You don't feel like you have to develop everything from scratch with your developers. You do with what you have and you like forge ahead. Any comments on that formula for success of, you know, like having everything look great, professional, and work without friction? But would you say there's a formula to success to launching these initiatives?
I think it comes back to the thinking of what the advisor needs and also thinking what our internal employees need. So what's really neat is that when there's a frictionless process on the external side, what comes through comes in less like frictionless, right? Than it should have in the back end as well, right? So when the employees are taking the time to look at it and we want quick turnaround times and we want to be able to make right decisions, your process needs to be frictionless, like you mentioned. And it allows us to distinguish ourselves because we want to make sure that although we're maybe not part of the big four insurance companies in Canada who have like 80% of the market, right? That you can still understand our products even if you're new to the industry or you're new to Assumption, right? And being not in those top four, you need to find ways to innovate and be different because you know that the advisor that might knock at your door, it's because they have someone that would qualify at Assumption, maybe not qualify elsewhere. And you want to make sure that they're hooked. So once they get that first policy through because of a, you know, just of a situation where they say, okay, I need to find someone who can insure this individual. You want to make sure that they're going to come back with other opportunities and not just come to you when it's like, you know, I need to find that exception. So having that flow and making it easy, whether it be on the life insurance or the investments and even on the group side, is that we want to make sure that you understand what the product is if you're making the right decision with the client and you're fully aware and transparent to what you're getting at the end of the day, right? Because that's the biggest fear, right? You don't want someone to have something that they don't understand. Yeah,
and a lot of people do.
And from a compliance side, it's very dangerous, right? You don't want to put someone in a situation where they don't have the right coverage for their needs. And for us, that's crucial, right? Because with the mass market, the mortgage market, you really want to make sure that the final expenses are paid out correctly. And something that our CEO, Sebastian Dupree, said once was, it's so special how when we do pay out a claim on the insurance side, you get a letter and it's signed from him, and it's like a sincere letter that's, you know, we're sorry for your loss, and here's, you know, thank you for your business, but also here's your payout, right? And we know that it's a beneficiary that's getting that, right? So it's someone who is probably not in the greatest moment of their life right now. And for us, it's important to know that that person is fully aware that we're behind them and we're ready to support them. And he'll receive letters back from them sometimes, and they're very heartfelt. And it just shows how humanistic we are as a company, because you will talk to someone and you'll know their name. Right. You'll know the underwriter's name that's working on the case if you're the advisor. You'll know, you know, the CEO's name. You know who our CFO is, etc. Like, we're all people in the community right now, and we have families as well. And we want to make sure that if, you know, something was to happen, that everybody feels that they were well supported by Assumption Life. And I personally have bought 2 life insurance policies from Assumption just because I believe in the product so much, right? And I know that they'll be there when it matters, and there won't be any gray zones. Right?
Agreed. And honestly, like, I'm at a point in my life where I'm considering participating life insurance. And Assumption's at the top of that list as far as considerations, just, you know, for the sake of, again, being, you know, having a product where you're that much more collaborative, if you will, with the company, and deeply where your success is my success. So definitely high up on the list. So you mentioned community. So I kind of want to shift gears here and maybe put the shop talk aside a little bit. And, you know, I can't help but notice that Assumption Life is very involved in the community, particularly here in Moncton, but I think in Atlantic Canada as well. Could you elaborate a little bit on Assumption's motivation to be so present, to do the fundraising, to support the huge events, to, you know, really shine on the kind of social citizen side of things?
Absolutely. So like I mentioned earlier, being a mutual allows us to take our profits and redistribute them, right? So we invest in the company, we invest in our products, our technology, etc. But we also reinvest in the community. And I think that's another reason why a lot of our employees stay for, you know, 20, 30, 40 years is that it attaches you to the community that you operate in. And I know you mentioned like even just Greater Moncton area, Atlantic Canada, but we're now expanding even that community investment across Canada, because we're realizing that our clients now are growing outside of Atlantic Canada. So how can we give back to those regions? And as our sales and our growth comes, so will that investment, right? Because we're taking a percentage and we're giving it back. So one thing that I know we've done over the years and that we continue to do is that investing in, you know, hospital and healthcare, right? Something that's very aligned with insurance. Investing in making people move in Canada, right? We want to see movement. We want people to be more active. We want people to have that accessibility, I think would be the right word, and to be able to go further with that. And how can we reinvest, whether it be through youth programs, whether it be through you know, initiatives just like we just saw they were biking for cancer in New Brunswick. Across they did like I think it's like 635 kilometers. Assumption is one of the major sponsors of that event year after year. So for us, it's making sure that we're at the right place to give back to the right community that is the one that we're going to protect for years and years to come, right? So all these initiatives are intentional in the sense that they're helping health, right? They're helping improve health, or they're helping people that have health problems or, you know, need the support when they need it most. So this is where we pride ourselves, and we've never stopped doing that. And I think staying a mutual is one of the reasons that we want to keep, you know, that status, is to continue to give back. And what our employees do is even, I think, a step beyond, because Assumption will support their employees. So one thing that we do is we give 2 half days a year for employees to do volunteer work.
That's right.
But we will also go above and beyond and have like initiatives like our employee program will have, our employee association will have our employees go out and clean the waterfront, right? For, you know, a full day for Earth Day and stuff like that. So above and beyond just the financial contribution, the impact, like, you know, we have employees that are hockey coaches, that are, you know, soccer coaches. We have other employees that are, you know, very high involved on boards within the community, whether it be, you know, the Capitol, whether it be IWK, you name it. And all of these individuals are doing this above and beyond their day-to-day work because they understand the sense of community, which is probably why they fit in really well with our Assumption Life philosophy as well.
And, you know, small side note on that, it's through Rachelle, who had invited me to join him on the financing campaign for the United Way. So it's through Assumption Life's dedication towards the United Way that I got connected with the United Way. And once I was on there, kind of along with colleagues, came up with the idea for Build for the Future, which is now on track to raise $1 million for the United Way over 10 years. So yeah, Assumption gateway to something very, very, you know, wonderful for the community.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And I hadn't realized that connection. I knew about the campaign, but I hadn't realized that it was through Rachelle. So I think that's another thing that's really important, is that, like, our leadership are they're incredibly intelligent individuals, but with such a strong sense of human caring affiliation with what they do every day, that they will think of that, right? To have a leadership team that will try to connect individuals in the right areas where their passion can grow. I think that's core, and I can totally relate to what you're saying, because I also had, you know, when my kids were born, they were in the NICU, and my husband and I decided to create a campaign to support the Moncton NICU, and I'm hoping this year we'll hit the 100,000. But the objective was, okay, let's just start something small, and then Assumption Life was able to even support me through that in the first couple of years, to say, okay, like, here are donations that are major donations. They were my biggest donor at the time, that helped me build that confidence in the community to say, I'm building something, awareness, etc., but they're supporting me as well. And to be an employee there and say, okay, they're right behind me and they believe in what I'm doing outside of my work. That's even like, that's like a step further that you won't necessarily get anywhere else. And not all companies are willing to care about what you do after your 8 to 5 job, right? And be there for you. So that's another reason why it's really important for us, like, to keep doing what we do, knowing that it will come back and help the community that we even live in, right? And we operate in.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's the greatest spot as anywhere to end it. Thank you very much for your time. It was great chatting. And yeah, like you said, keep doing what you're doing and the way you're doing it.
Perfect. Right? Thank you. Thanks, Marcel.
Take care. Bye.